to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome to Hour 2 of Catholic Answers Live for this Friday. Tom Price here at the studios of EWTN Radio in Birmingham, Alabama, filling in today for Patrick Coffin. He will be back next week. I promise, Scout's honor. Had a great hour last hour, and this hour is also going to be kind of a rockin' and rollin' and thoughtful hour. We're talking this hour with Mike Aquilina, and a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, how Catholicism shapes our world. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom.
Delighted to be talking with you again. Mike, of course, author or editor of more than 30 books on Catholic history, doctrine, and devotion. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, he's a real slacker. Of course, I'm kidding around here. Mike is co-host with Scott Hahn of 8 series that have aired here on EWTN. His career in publishing spans almost 3 decades. And this is a fascinating thing. He also wrote the USCCB's Theological Reflection for Catechetical Study in 2011. That's quite an honor, Mike.
I felt honored. I felt humbled by it. It was nice to be invited.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to mention your newest book, and that's called Yours in the Church, How Catholicism Shapes Our World, which is our theme. And that is it out yet?
Yes, it is. I'm holding it in my hand, and it's available from Amazon and from your favorite Catholic bookstores.
Sounds great. And this particular hour, as we're talking about how Catholicism shapes our world, it seems to me that certainly every year that goes by, the Church is under a very critical spotlight. Just about everything you have ever heard in the Church, in the secular media, is very negative. You don't hear about things like the Al Smith dinner, like we had last night, and all the great work that foundation does. You don't hear about the great work that the Knights of Columbus are doing. You just hear these negative things, and I understand that and that whole side of journalism. But golly, these critics are actually living and walking around in a world shaped by the Church, whether or not they realize it.
They are, and thanks for saying that, because one of the reasons I wrote the book, Yours is the Church, is because I was reading all those reports, I was reading all those accounts and all those reviews, and you hear them on the radio, you see them on television, and I got fed up. I got fed up because they'll review, they'll report on something. Say somebody puts up one of these offensive works of art, like the Dung Madonna or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, something very offensive, something blasphemous, and it's not good art. The reason they do things that are so shocking is because they're not up to snuff, and they put this bad art out there. They get publicity, and then they get shown in major galleries, and they get coverage in the New York Times. Well, the New York Times, when some Catholic somewhere, someone like Bill Donahue, raises his voice in protest, the New York Times has its storyline. Well, we all know that the Catholic Church is anti-art. The Catholic Church is against high culture, and we all know that's bogus. You see the same thing come out when the Church protests against embryonic stem cell research. Then the storyline is that the Church is anti-science, and it goes out there, and so many people, this is the way they get their information. This is the way they get what they think is knowledge. They have no real knowledge of history, so the storyline is that the Catholic Church is against all these good things. It's against world peace. It's against charity. It's against art. It's against literature. It's against culture. When the Church really laid the foundations for all those things and gave us the greatest positive contributions in each and every one of those areas.
We're talking here with Mike Aquilina about how Catholicism shapes our world, and our phone number is 1-888 318-7884. I'm thinking here, Mike, about how the word religion or the theme of religion is often blamed for causing wars, as if we would all be better off if we didn't have religion to fight over. But that's kind of simplistic, isn't it?
It's a very strange idea, especially when you level accusations like that against Christianity, because it's only with Christianity that we have a discussion about the morality of fighting a war. It's only with Christianity that we have the idea of a just war. You know, there's this saying we all grew up hearing it: all's fair in love and war. Mm-hmm. Well, that was reality. That was reality. Go read any of the epics of Homer, and you'll see that on the battlefield, anything was okay. Homer is filled with descriptions of men eviscerating other men on the battlefield, and it was considered the right thing to do, not only to defeat your enemy but to humiliate your enemy. And if you utterly defeated a people, well, the next thing you did as you were leaving their country is you salted their fields so that they would have no crops for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, nice.
This is the way war was waged. Now, today, because of Christianity, we actually hold people to a higher standard. And whenever there is an abuse of prisoners of war, whenever there's an abuse on the battlefield, whenever civilians are harmed, people raise their voice in moral indignation, as they should. But they shouldn't say that religion is the problem here, because religion, specifically the Christian religion, is actually the solution that they're citing whenever they have an outcry against abuses during times of war.
Hey, you know, as I was looking at my notes here and your bio, I just picked up my pen and wrote down 3 words: the civilizing influence. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of it boils down to that, because
sure.
You know, as you're saying, we don't salt the fields anymore, do we?
No, and we don't humiliate prisoners of war. And it's been a gradual transformation, but that transformation was worked because of the Christian reflection on moral life and its application to battlefield behavior. This happened over many centuries. It happened slowly, but it happened only because it was carried out in a Christian context. It's not going on in a lot of other places because you don't have that foundation for the conversation.
We're talking here with Mike Aquilina about how Catholicism shapes our world, and we're gonna narrow this down to Catholicism. Actually, why don't we do that right now? Over the last several months, we've heard a lot about, and if I hear it one more time, I think I'm going to open a vein, about the so-called war on women. Ay, ay, ay. But when we look at it, when you and I look at it, we can see that the Church, the Catholic Church, has affected women's rights in many powerful ways.
And we can even say that Christianity invented women's rights, because nowhere in the ancient world will you find women being treated as people apart from the Judeo-Christian tradition. Mm-hmm. If you look at Greco-Roman paganism, women are consistently treated like property. Most females probably were killed at birth. If a woman gave birth to a baby and it was female, the baby would likely be drowned or taken out to the garbage heap and left for the birds of prey. Why? Because women were expensive to raise. You needed a dowry to marry one off when they were 12 years old, and you had to feed them in the meantime, and they were never going to have a job. They were never going to be able to do anything to support the family. So in Greco-Roman paganism, infanticide was very common, and this has been carried through in a lot of other pagan cultures down the centuries, and even into our own. And now we see sex-selective abortions happening very commonly in many non-Christian cultures.
Well, it's fascinating to me. Here locally in Birmingham, we had our annual banquet for our local crisis pregnancy center, and talking about how many babies have been saved over the past 12 months since the previous banquet. And you often hear the whole business about women's rights, but you don't hear about baby women's rights, do you?
No, you don't. And you really nailed it there, Tom, because it was the female children who were who were the victims most often. We've unearthed these sewers from the ancient world, and the sewers are clogged with the bones of newborn babies. We found archaeologists have found a couple of different garbage dumps, and these garbage dumps are just heaped with the bones of female babies. This is the value that was placed on females in Greco-Roman culture. If you did manage to survive and live, you still, as a woman, would have no rights, really. You were always the property of some male. Your identity depended on some male in your life, either your father, your husband, or your sons, really. You were dependent on them for your identity. A woman could not give testimony as a witness in a court of law, because women were really considered to be like children. Only male children presumably would grow up someday. Women were never allowed to grow up in society. Only with Christianity do we find the idea of women's rights. And not only women's rights, but the idea of self-determination for women. Because from the first Christian generation, women could make the decision to consecrate their lives to virginity, to consecrate their lives to widowhood, and say, I'm not going to be dependent on any male in my life. I am going to give my life to the church. I'm going to give my life to God, and that is my dignity. Only with Christianity is that possible.
Fascinating. You know, we're going to take a break here and then go to the phones. We could really take this any way that you, the listener, wants to. We could talk about modern science. We could talk about art and literature, the rights of women, the rights of children, church shaping our future. There's really a variety of ways we can go. I recommend you get in early on the phones right now, because this will be a fast-moving hour, and you're going to learn a lot, especially if you haven't really thought about this too much, how Catholicism shapes our world. Here's our phone number, 1-888-318-7884. That's 1-888-31-TRUTH. Talking today with Mike Aquilina here on Catholic Answers Live.
Come on in. The water's fine. Catholic Answers Live. By now, you've heard us talk a lot about the resources we've produced to help you vote your Catholic faith on November 6th, and many of you have ordered our outstanding materials. What we ask you to do now is get a hold of multiple copies to hand out to your family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers, because every vote counts. An informative and eye-opening booklet from Catholic Answers could just be the thing to change the mind and heart of someone you know. Call 888-291-8000 or click Catholic.com to take advantage of special bulk pricing on Straight Talk About Abortion, Straight Talk About Religious Liberty, Why Homosexual Unions Are Not Marriages, and our best-selling Voter's Guide for Serious Catholics. If you're not familiar with these items, log on to Catholic.com right now and get acquainted with them. They're perfect for passing out to those you know who need to know what the Church really teaches on these crucial issues. Time is of the essence, so hurry and place your order at 888-291-8000 or Catholic.com.
Don't miss the Good Fight this Saturday. Our saint is the incomparable Francis de Sales, and our future saints are Victor Claveau, a master evangelist, and Tom George, founder of the Mount Carmel Youth Ranch in Wyoming. That's the Good Fight, Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
The Good Fight comes to you live each Saturday, only on EWTN Radio. For times in your area, log on to EWTN.com.
Bring your parish to life with a presentation by one of our terrific speakers. Learn more today at Catholic.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
We are talking about how Catholicism shapes our world with author and host Mike Aquilina here on this edition of Catholic Answers Live. The phone number again, 1-888-318-7884. Off we go to Ron in Canada, who's listening on EWTN Shortwave. Hi, Ron.
Hi, Tom. Mike, I believe that the Catholic Church made a great error over the last 2 decades that has hurt its worldwide influence when it started issuing official apologies to Muslims, Jews, and non-Catholic Christians for past Catholic Church errors and conduct. And I say this because I have noticed that these other religions have not reciprocated and apologized for their atrocities against Christianity and the Catholic Church. And my question to you is, should not the Catholic Church stop apologizing to Jews, Muslims, and non-Catholic Christians until we receive their apologies for their mistakes?
That's a very good question.
It really is, and I'm just wondering if part of that might be that no one individual speaks for those churches the way the Catholic Church is set up.
So it is an advantage we have.
Yeah.
But a couple things that I want to point out. One is that the apologies actually it hasn't been an ongoing campaign of apology or anything like that. Pope John Paul II, Blessed John Paul, issued these apologies not on behalf of the church, but on behalf of members of the church who committed these things. They weren't attributed to the church itself, and of course the discussion then was whether anyone had the right really to make an apology on behalf of another person, especially a person long dead or persons long dead. But he did that in order to have a purification of memory, he said, in the years leading up to the turn of the millennium. So it was really for our benefit as much as for anyone else's benefit, and for us to have that kind of purification so that we don't grow too proud, so that we go into the coming years well aware of where we've fallen short in the past. I don't think that we need to have a position on this, because I think that this was something that was done in those years leading up to the turn of the millennium. It has not been continued. I haven't seen Pope Benedict issuing any apologies on behalf of anyone else. So that's one thing. It's kind of a moot point. But still, even to answer your last question about whether we should wait for anyone else to apologize, I think that even in interpersonal relations, if we have a reason to apologize, even if I have a reason to apologize to one of my children or to my wife, I need to do that anyway, and not wait around for anybody else to apologize. Yeah. It's always good to just come clean and say I'm sorry and then move on. We can't wait around for others, because, as Tom pointed out, they might not have any representative who's capable of speaking up that way. But also because we set the standard. We've got to take the high road, and we've got to show people the way, even if they choose not to follow us.
Okay, David?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your call. Excellent call there. That opens up a line for you at 1-888-318-7884. We go now to Sarah in Hemet, California. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks for calling.
Thank you for taking my call. You may have just answered kind of my question. I'm an English major and a history major. My focus was women's rights and feminist theory. So I completely understand where you're saying that Christianity is the true feminism. However, I was wondering on the just war situation, it might be related to the last caller. In the university, and it was a Catholic university, they gave us a really bad rap on the Crusades. They always were talking about how horrible we were to the Muslims and everything like that. How does that define a just war when Christianity actually, in their minds, did an unjust war? And that wasn't my area of expertise, so I don't know much about it.
Okay.
Well, the problem with making any blanket statements about the Crusades is that it's impossible. The Crusades took place over the course of centuries, and they took place in a lot of different ways in a lot of different locations, and led by a lot of different people for different reasons. So it's hard to make generalizations about the justice of the Crusades in general. You'd really have to look at all of the different campaigns and evaluate them on just war terms. Now there are scholars who have done that and done it really well. Paul Crawford, who's at California University of Pennsylvania, has done a lot of good work. Jonathan Riley Smith, in his histories on the Crusades, has done excellent work, and Thomas Madden has as well. Those are three historians right off the bat who have taken this question very seriously and written voluminously on it. I'd suggest looking at their work and really taking the Crusades one at a time and looking at them that way. It's impossible to make blanket condemnations related to the Crusades. Again, people were not fighting wars according to the same international standards that we observe today. It was a different world. We're judging our own side by these very high ideals, and we're judging the other sides, unfortunately, by different standards. So, in order to be fair to our own ancestors, we should be sensitive to all these things.
Does that make sense, Sarah?
Yeah, it does, and thank you for listing the authors. I'll definitely look into them. Thank you
very much. Take a look
and
email me if you have trouble finding them, and I'll give you the book titles as well.
Do you have an email address that we can pass on, Mike?
Yeah, mike@mikeaquilina.com.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Our phone number here is 1-888-318-7884, 23 past the hour. Let's go to Ben in, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Hi, Ben.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks for calling.
Okay, my question is this. If the Catholic Church is so much for women's equal rights, how come they haven't allowed women to become priests and just kept them just as nuns?
Kept them just as nuns. Well, it's hard to know where to begin with that. For one thing, nuns have tremendous dignity. It's like asking whether my mother has equal dignity to a priest. My mother has equal dignity to a priest because she's a mother, and her station is not lower in life than my parish priest. She's called to be a saint according to her vocation, and my parish priest cannot be a mother, no matter how much he wants to be. God has kind of established it that way. In the same way, Christ really did make it quite clear that we're to be ordaining men. He had his disciples. They were men. He did not have to make that choice. It was not culturally conditioned. He chose 12 men to be fathers within the church, to be his first bishops, his apostles, and they passed it on to the next generation. And the church has always guarded that tradition. It's the same way it's guarded all the other traditions of the sacraments. If you read history, you see that women have always had an equal dignity in the church, even in the very early church, in that world, that Greco-Roman pagan world that was so anti-woman. We find women functioning as leaders and teachers within the church in those early generations. Perpetua and Felicity, they were in prison. Okay, we're in the year 203 A.D., and they're jailed along with a lot of other members from their church. Perpetua emerges as the leader. She does not emerge as a priest. Her parish priest is there in prison with her, but Perpetua emerges as the leader. Why? Because she's a great saint, not because she has holy orders. Holy orders isn't going to make her or anyone else a saint, and that's what we're called to be before anything else. Women don't need holy orders in order to have dignity in the church or anywhere else in the world.
Ben?
I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it just confuses me more than anything.
What's the confusing part?
I still don't see how they can overlook the fact that they're being racist, or not racist, but sexist by not allowing women to become priests.
Is there no allowance for different roles for men and women at all? Must we be entirely interchangeable?
Well, no, but it just doesn't make sense to me how they can limit the position of a woman in the church and only let the men become the leaders of the church. Why can't a woman?
But no, women are leaders in the church, and they always have been.
Absolutely.
They're just not ordained.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the great leaders of the church in the 20th century, in my opinion, is Mother Angelica.
Mother Angelica, Mother Teresa of Calcutta. They had more influence than the popes of their century.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it right there, gentlemen, because we're up against a hard break. Keep it right here on Catholic Answers Live. We'll be right back in about 2 minutes. Don't go away.
Catholic Answers Live. Catholic Answers sells hundreds of faith resources to help you better know, love, and share your Catholic faith. And we'd love to have you make each one a part of your personal collection. But we know you're busy and life moves fast. That's why we're making it more appealing than ever for you to subscribe to our award-winning Catholic Answers magazine. From now until the end of the year, save 25% off the regular subscription price. Call 888-291-8000 or go to Catholic.com today. Widely regarded as the premier magazine of Catholic apologetics and evangelization, Catholic Answers Magazine features the articles you want by the authors you know, including our own staff apologists. It makes a perfect gift for students, priests, seminarians, or do yourself the favor of signing up and becoming a more informed Catholic. Enjoy 25% off the normal subscription price of Catholic Answers Magazine through December. Phone 888-291-8000 or visit Catholic.com.
Search high and low and tell me when you found the most listened to Catholic radio show, the Top Catholic Apologetics Magazine, the world's largest online Catholic discussion community, the most trusted apologists to answer your email and telephone questions, the most sought-after speakers for Catholic conferences and events, the best Catholic books, DVDs, and other products on the planet, and chastity materials that are changing young lives every day. I'll save you the time, because they're all found in the same place, right here at Catholic Answers. For decades, God has blessed us with the opportunity to reach into the lives of millions of people just like you. We take it as an honor and a privilege, and we're glad you trust us to help you know the faith, live the faith, and defend the faith. No matter what you're looking for, if it has to do with the Catholic faith, turn first to us. We're Catholic Answers.
And we're delighted you could join us for Catholic Answers Live today, the final half hour of the show, of the hour, of the week, etc. Tom Price here, along with Mike Aquilina, and we're talking about how Catholicism shapes our world. If you'd like to jump in, the phone number is 1-888-318-7884. There we go. Let's go now to Tom in Stockton, California, listening on Immaculate Heart Radio, KWG. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, hi. How you guys doing?
Doing great. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, pretty good. I appreciate the show, and I know this question is going to be a little bit off topic, but it might be appropriate. I was in a discussion about church history, and it came up that the church has, from the other person, that the church has changed a lot over the centuries in terms of its basic stances and doctrines. And I didn't really think so. I think in principle the church has stayed the same, but maybe we've grown or we've expanded or we've got more understanding than earlier. Can you give an example of the church actually changing its, positions or stances or doctrines over time, Mike?
I cannot. I don't know of the church changing its doctrine on anything since the early centuries of the church. There is development of doctrine. We do grow deeper in our understanding of the deposit of faith that was left by Jesus Christ and the apostles, entrusted to the apostles and passed on within the church. We reflect upon it. And we gain a deeper understanding of it, but I can't think of anything that's changed down the centuries. Sometimes people will try to say, for example, that the church has changed its position on slavery. But the church didn't have a position on slavery until we had official condemnations of it. It was part of the landscape, the moral landscape of the ancient world. St. Paul seemed to be uncomfortable with it, but he didn't condemn it. The only voice I know of from the ancient church absolutely condemning it is Gregory of Nyssa, St. Gregory of Nyssa, who was a great father of the church. But then gradually the church, the saints really did take us to that understanding that it's just not right. It's just wrong to hold slaves. slaves. It doesn't conform to the Christian idea of human dignity, and so the church did come out with stronger statements against it. But the church has never changed its doctrine in that matter. Sometimes also people will mention condemnations that came up later about technologies and that sort of thing, but that's not a change. That's just the church applying its traditional moral teaching to new realities in the world. For example, the birth control pill. There were medicines of sterility in the ancient world, and they were uniformly condemned by the church. What the church had to consider in the 1940s and 50s and 60s was whether this new medication fit the same description as those ancient potions, and the church decided that it did. But if your friend comes up with any examples, that would be helpful. I don't know of any examples that I could cite of church doctrine changing down the centuries.
Well, there was one example, if I might, quickly. They brought up the one example of suicide, for instance, in the Middle Ages, how it was, condemned people who committed suicide. This other person said that the church would condemn them to hell. And I said, well, I thought perhaps individuals within the church might have said that. I can't recall reading a church doctrine that would say that specifically.
No, I think,
yeah.
Your friend seems to be confusing a lot of different issues there. The church has always considered suicide to be a mortal sin. Now, the church has never condemned anyone to hell. You won't even find, we canonize saints, but you won't ever find a pope declaring anyone damned. We canonize saints, and we say they're in heaven, but you won't ever find a papal statement saying that someone is damned. It's not even said of Judas. So we never have that kind of presumption. We always have hope for every individual that there was repentance. And now there were times in the church, and when the funeral rites were denied to someone who committed suicide, because it is a mortal sin. It is considered a moral sin. Now, it's a very grave act, of course, and the question is whether the person is individually culpable, whether they were mentally ill, whether they were they had the level of self-possession necessary to make a moral judgment at that time.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different issues being confused here, and the church really has not changed its doctrine at all. It's changed some applications of the doctrine. It's changed practices within the church, disciplines, and liturgical norms, but it hasn't changed its doctrine.
Tom, thank you so much. Sure, thank you for calling. Let's go down to David in Charleston, South Carolina, listening on 7:30 a.m. Hi, David.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. And Mike, I want to mention first off that if the Olympics ever have theological beach volleyball, you and Scott Hahn are going to get the gold medals because y'all are awesome. I know you write the scripts, but you basically set the ball for Scott to spike episode after episode, and it's a great gift to the church, and I want you to know I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I will pass it on to Scott, but I want you to know they're not scripted. Those are conversations, and we have a great time because we have a long-running friendship. We go back a long ways, and it's just a conversation that goes on and on and on, and the camera catches us.
Yes. I know that, but I mean, you can't fake that. Your friendship is real.
Yeah,
it's
it is.
Genuine.
Well,
and if you're having half as much fun as you look like you're having, it's got to be a blast.
It is a blast.
Let me just mention one thing here about theological volleyball, and I just want to remind everybody, no spiking, okay? All right. Very good.
David, I'm going to remember that phrase, by the way. Thank you.
That is excellent. What is your question, David?
Well, now I'm going to tie Mike's knowledge of the early church fathers and ask Mike basically about what point in time and which church father would you point as kind of a beacon of this? When did Christian thought become permeated enough in the Western world to start really having an impact on the common culture of the day?
Great question.
That is a great question, and you know what? I'm not going to point to a church father. I'm going to talk about the pagans, because what we notice around the turn of the 2nd century to the 3rd century is that the pagans are noticing us. And we're making a difference. We're affecting the conversation. They still dismiss us as a superstition, but they're looking at the effects that our moral teaching have on Christian lives. They're jealous of what they see. They want to know how they can get a piece of that. So we start to see some interesting things happen during that period. We start to see these mystery religions rise up because the pagans want to have a sense of the sacramental. They want to have a sense of sacramental life like we have. But the thing that's most interesting is that during the time of the Severan emperors, so we're talking about the very early 200s, the first years of that century, we start to see anti-abortion legislation coming into play.
Wow.
And it sounds Christian. So I think, and many historians think, that what was happening is that Christian moral arguments were starting to have an effect on pagan legislators. Maybe not so much on pagan consciences, but at least they looked at it and they said, you know what? We have a demographic problem in this society. We have a problem with homeland security because we're not reproducing ourselves. We have a bad economy because we're not reproducing ourselves, and yet those Christians are out there and they're having babies and they're happy. They have a nice economy. They have a nice thing going. So they start to try to legislate against abortion. It doesn't work. It fails. But just the effort there, I think, is the first glimmer of the Christian future for the Western world.
And that was 2nd century, right?
Yes. Well, it's around the time of the Severans. Okay. I'd say like right around the year 203.
How's that, David?
Oh, that's fabulous. So basically, even before the church is legal, even before the persecutions have run their course, we're already 11, making a difference.
Yeah, long before the church is legal.
That's where we need to go.
110 years before the church is legal.
Okay.
That is a remarkable milestone.
Good stuff there.
It is, and I think that we can have that kind of effect even today. The reason I'm so fascinated by history is because it gives us hope and it gives us practical lessons for the role we might play in the future.
Absolutely. You go now.
Thanks, David. Yeah, keep playing that volleyball. Gotta keep the thing up in the air. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go to Patrick and Gabriella and hopefully you at 1-888-318-7884. We're talking with Mike Aquilina about how Catholicism shapes our world on today's edition of Catholic Answers Live.
This is the place for Catholic Answers Live.
With the recent government mandate requiring insurance companies to pay for contraception, sterilization, and abortifacient drugs, it's become abundantly obvious to those with eyes to see religious freedom in America is being threatened like never before. It's nearly impossible to live according to one's religious conscience and still be accepted as an equal participant in American culture. What can be done? Start by ordering Catholic Answers' new booklet, Straight Talk About Religious Liberty. It's available now at Catholic.com or by calling 888-291-8000. Learn where freedom of religion really comes from and why it cannot be denied, not without destroying the foundation of all other human freedoms. People of goodwill must act now, before it's too late. Let your close allies at Catholic Answers stand beside you. Order Straight Talk About Religious Liberty today at 888-291-8000 or at Catholic.com.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Serpa. In Luke 12, Jesus warns us not to be afraid of those who kill the body, but of the one who, after killing, has the power to cast one into Gehenna. Even sparrows sold for 2 small coins do not escape the notice of God. The hairs on your head are numbered, he said. Fear not. You are worth more than many sparrows. Most of us fear rejection, the disapproval of people we respect, and certainly we fear for our physical safety. But our blessed Lord is telling us that the only safety that ultimately matters is the safety from sin and temptation. How much do we fear that? You won't find NBC or even Fox doing a special warning of the dangers of that. Our ultimate safety lies in repentance and the willingness to forego anything and everything in order to be faithful to Him. I'm Father Vincent Serpa for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Call now with your question. 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
How Catholicism shapes our world. I mean, if I was a poet like you, Mike, I would say, let me count the ways. There are
right.
so many ways. This is something we haven't even talked about. You are actually a poet and a lyricist. Beyond, getting into all these deep theological issues, your poems have been translated into Polish and Spanish. Your stuff has appeared in First Things and Plains Poetry Journal, and your songs have been recorded by Dion. I think that is beyond cool.
I think it's beyond cool too. Kind of took me by surprise, but he and I have written a lot of music together. And he's recorded 5 of them so far.
Very cool, very cool. You're listening to Catholic Answers Live. We are talking with Mike Aquilina about how Catholicism shapes our world. And speaking of our world, you may have heard, now, this is not just a rumor, there actually is an election coming up. It's the first Tuesday in November, so you'll definitely want to get out there and vote. And one of the things you'll want to keep in mind when you go to vote is that our religious liberties are kind of being, hurt, trampled on, stomped. There are a number of rallies going on all across the United States tomorrow, Saturday. So if you're wanting to know more about that, there's a phenomenal website called StandUpForReligiousFreedom.com. StandUpForReligiousFreedom.com. And the rallies are going on at various times. Some of them are happening at noon. I think the one in San Diego is going on in the morning. So definitely check that out, StandUpForReligiousFreedom.com. Another great one is ReligiousLiberties.org. So check both of those out and find out more about what's going on tomorrow. Back to the phones. Patrick in St. Regis Falls, New York? Is that right, Patrick?
Yes.
And you're listening on EWTN Shortwave. Thanks for calling.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Sure.
I just wanted to mention or kind of follow up on someone who called earlier about the apologies that Pope John Paul II made.
Yes.
And I would agree with you that we need to apologize where we were at fault in the past, and and also not to become too proud. But it just seems to me, and does it seem to you, that one of our big problems isn't being too proud, and especially at least in the historical field, it's just, I think it seems like the popular culture is just sort of always berating us for being sort of retrograde and with medieval mentalities, and how we haven't and that how we're behind the times. And I would think that. Well, a great book that I've read recently, How the Catholic Church Built Western Civilization, seems...
That is a great book.
Yeah, it seems to be a book that people really need today, because we're just educated completely in the opposite direction, and this the truth really needs to get out.
I agree, and that's why we started this conversation in the first place. I just wrote a book called Yours is the Church, How Catholicism Shapes Our World, and it goes through the different fields like arts, the fine arts and music and science and literature and government and the conduct of war, and it looks at the positive contributions that the Catholic Church has made in each and every one of those fields, and how what we have today would really be unthinkable without Catholicism. I think you're right, but I don't think that the problem is humility. It may be false humility, but really the problem is ignorance. The problem is that our collective memory doesn't reach back further than the last episodes of Seinfeld. We really do have to push the envelope and push ourselves and make the effort to study a little bit about our history and know the truth, because we're not going to get the truth from the New York Times. We're not going to get it from 60 Minutes. We're not going to get it from the latest hip website. You're absolutely right that people, especially Catholics today, are ignorant of their own heritage, and that is corrosive to faith.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. That was a great answer. I'd like to. I want to get a hold of your book too.
Where's
it available?
It's available right now. Yours is the Church. It's out from Servant Books.
Okay, Servant Books. All right. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Patrick. That actually reminds me, since we are in a political season right now, you often hear, when you hear the candidates talking about, they only go back to the previous president when they're comparing and contrasting. They're not going back to decisions that Abraham Lincoln made or Jefferson or Washington. You're right when you say that this ignorance is really what's holding us back.
It is, and we're not dealing with reality. Then we have the world that we have because we've inherited it. Yeah. We've inherited the good things. We've inherited a lot of the bad things. We have to understand where these things came from and why we have them if we're going to deal with them effectively. I think it was G.K. Chesterton who said, before you tear down a wall, you want to find out why it was put up in the first place.
Yeah, good stuff. Let's go now to Gabriella is that Put-in-Bay, Ohio?
Put-in-Bay.
Put-in-Bay. Okay, very good. Thanks for calling, Gabriella. Your question?
Well, I have, since I got on the line such a long time ago, I have now two topics, and you can choose.
Okay.
One would be addressing the future of the Middle East peace process and the roots of it from the time of Abraham and the apology about Abraham, that we can address that. That's what I originally called. But the other one would have to do with the future of our civilization due to the exponential population growth that we are facing, and how because of that we're having less jobs because too many people are fighting for the same jobs, for the same food. We're really just exhausting our natural supplies. So that will affect the future of our survival. And the other one is about, of course, the problem with the Middle East and the apology for Abraham. So you choose the subject.
Well, I guess we'll start at the beginning. I'm not sure what you mean about an apology for Abraham. Are we apologizing to Abraham for turning Ishmael out and for causing the division in the first place?
Yes.
Well, again, I don't think that anybody is in a position to make an apology on behalf of Abraham because he's been dead a long time, and I don't think that offering an apology would do anybody any good. Nobody's really authorized to speak on Abraham's behalf today. So that's kind of a moot point. I do want to say though that I cannot imagine peace in the Middle East. And the last time I was in Israel, I was talking to a young Palestinian Christian. He may have been 20, 21 years old. And I noticed that he kept coming back to this refrain. He kept coming back to the line, pray for peace, pray for peace. And I was standing there. I was standing with Scott Hahn, actually. And Scott said to the young man, he said, if your prayer were answered and you got peace, what would it look like? What would peace look like here? And the boy didn't miss a beat. He said, I can't imagine it. I can't imagine it, but God can. Pray for peace. Pray for peace. And I think that's what we have to do. I'll apologize on behalf of Abraham now if it would do any good, but it's not going to do any good because I'm not authorized to make that apology, and nobody on earth is. Historical apologies, I don't think, do much good.
But how do you justify Pope John Paul apologizing?
Well, I already talked about that. It's a purification of memory.
Okay, so can we do what's called a purification of memory?
Well, we've done it. The Pope was calling us to look back on our history and find those things, and he made those statements in the years leading up to the turn of the millennium. I don't know that it's going to do a lot of good to reach back through all those millennia because I don't think that the anger is directed at Abraham. in the same way that
the root cause of it was because of Abraham.
But no, do you hear people angry about Abraham? I've never heard anyone on a radio show ranting against Abraham because he was the one who caused it. So who would be mollified by this?
Therein lies the hatred between the Jews and the Arabs. And that's not going
But they don't direct their hatred at Abraham.
Well, the Arabs resent any heirs of Abraham, which is the Jews, and therefore the
But not because they're heirs of Abraham. They never direct their anger toward Abraham. Because they, too, are looking back to Abraham as their ancestor.
But then how do you explain their hatred for the Jews?
Well, that has other historical roots, but they are not directing their anger at Abraham. All I'm saying is that issuing an apology on behalf of Abraham would just be met by confusion and puzzlement in the Arab world. They wouldn't know what you were talking about.
Gabriella, thank you so much for your call. It really made us think. I appreciate that. Let's go now to Paul in Pittsburgh. Hi there, Paul.
Yes, hi. God bless you guys. You guys are a gift from God.
Thank you.
I was wondering the other day, since this is worldwide global media,
yes,
and ultrasounds change 20 or 30% of pro-choice's view on Alveda King's a perfect example. She had 2 or 3 abortions. She was a pastor. They show her ultrasounds for the first time. She's militant pro-life now. Why doesn't EWTN run ultrasounds all night, half-hour ultrasounds, 10 minutes of Project Rachel, Rachel's Hope, Rachel's Vineyard, 10 minutes of how much our dear Our Lady loves us, and then 10 minutes of selling DVDs of ultrasounds. I think it would accelerate the end of it. It just really would. And then what happened, obviously the doctors are liable, medicine's liable, and the lawyers would have a field day just making money against the industry. It'll collapse it. I think it's the way to go. I think we can't take another pro-choice president. It's just the carnage is just too deep.
Well, if I can speak for EWTN, we run a tremendous amount of pro-life programming every day on radio and television, on the website. I turned on the TV monitor here in the studio a moment ago. They were taping another Defending Life series with Janet Morana and Priests for Life. EWTN does a lot to promote the sanctity of life.
It's a visual battle. They're not verbal. It's visual. You have to see ultrasounds.
No, I understand.
They changed 20 to 30% of the opinion right then and there. And I think God gave us a great gift of technology. And I don't think it's being used to the depth that it could. I think it's a tool, obviously spiritual battle first, sacrament, prayer, and all that. But it's a tool I think we're not really using that we could very easily use. I think Catholic media could end this thing in a year. I go back to Dr. Wilkie's. He changed George Bush's opinion in a 5-hour discussion, and George Bush was pro-life from then on. So I think that we need to remember that example. But it takes ultrasounds to do that. I really don't think Catholic media. I think it's a visual battle. First, a spiritual battle. It's a visual battle.
Well, Paul, we certainly agree with you, and we thank you for listening to EWTN. Any thoughts along those lines there, Mike? We're just about out of time.
I'm pretty much ignorant of what's sustainable on television. I do agree that I do agree with him that the visual image is powerful, and it does change minds. It changes hearts. I don't know that it would I don't know that it would be good for EWTN's viewership if you showed those for a sustained amount of time. I suspect that most people would tune out after they saw it. It would do some good to some people, but I think you would end up losing a lot of viewers as well. Again, I'm not an expert in media, but that's my instinct, is that if you kept that up for 20 minutes, you'd be dropping a lot of viewers, and you'd end up off the remote control of a lot of people.
Mike Aquilina, I want to thank you so much. The book, How Catholicism Shapes Our World, Yours is the Church. See you next time here on Catholic Answers Live. I'm Tom Price. Have a great, great weekend.